What's up, everybody? Happy New Year again. I'm BobbyFi back with my man Sheets, and we are doing an NFL breakdown for this really exciting weekend with some incredible tournaments. I just got back from vacation. I'm still feeling it. Sheets has been doing an awesome job covering. Sheets, we did a fun NBA slate tonight. Now we've got a really fun weekend of football. This is a good way to come home.
What's the let's get right into it. What's the weather like in these places? Like, so they're two domes, and okay, I was hoping for the big playoff snow ice bowl games, but there's going to be none of those. I'm looking at New England, 40% rain. Philly's going to be beautiful out. I'm not going to lie. I was all ready to put to bed the NFL season, but like they're giving $1 million for first. So you know what? Let's go.
Yeah, let's
try to get at least. Let's try to get at least part of that 100-way tie, but maybe not. Maybe you don't get the 100-way tie.
It could go a lot of ways. I feel like we got some interesting plays. I mean, this is a fun slate. Like, I'm excited.
Okay, so let's think about it. First of all, planning wise. So it's over a 2-day period, right? So there's going to be 2 games Saturday and 2 games Sunday. So again, I guess one thing that you should think about is what's the impact of playing the later games is with respect to flexibility. It obviously gives you flexibility to kind of screw around if you don't play anybody from the Buffalo-Houston game, for example, and, if you fade Hopkins or something and Hopkins just goes bananas, you have the ability to do some things in the later games that otherwise you wouldn't want to do, but now you sort of have to do. So I guess there's kind of a natural instinct for me to want to play the later games with respect to flexibility. So that is at least one interesting dynamic of this, is that it is a full 2-game slate.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, actually. It's a pretty good slate. I've had incredible
2-day slate. Sorry, 2 days.
Yeah, I've had great success with these 2-day slates in the past, even when they're just for some reason I won all of the big tournaments back-to-back years in the playoffs 2 years ago and 3 years ago. And I think that there's a real edge to be taken. Back then, what I did was actually one of them was more than that, because it was Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl. They played the old double tight end move with one of the cheap tight ends was a smart way to go then. There are some weird angles you can take on this slate because it's I think the ownership is way more spread out than it would ordinarily be on a 4-game slate, because I think you could make an argument for each of these games, and we'll get into it. But like for me, and based on what you said, like I always like to have the late pivot decisions anyway. And it just so happens for me personally, my favorite game is the last game of the slate. So that's sort of the way I'm going to initially start building. Not to say that I won't have some other pieces, but that's my main target is that.
I would also like to add, by the way, that it's extra unique in that not only it's a 2-day slate, but remember every game is an island game, right? So there's never 2 games, barring overtime. There are never 2 games kind of going at the same time. And I don't even think they'd start the other game if the first game went to overtime anyway, for TV reasons. So you actually have the ability to, and it's probably worthwhile to look after each game, kind of where you stand and what pivots and what things you could change to kind of either beef up your lineups or kind of tighten it up depending on whatever. So like it goes both ways. If you play like, a whole bunch of Isaiah McKenzie or, somebody, whatever, from this first game that no one's going to play, or I don't know if they're going to play him, whatever, just as an example, and he goes freaking off, then you don't necessarily have to be as off the board in some of your day 2 games. So that's, again, it's just a different dynamic of this slate compared to others.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get into it. We'll start with the first game because, again, I said we could really argue for a lot of these games. I can make an argument for a lot of quarterback receiver combinations, and I can definitely do it in this game.
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. So as we go into playoff football, I'm presuming, and maybe this is wrong, but I was going to say that you maybe get more casual fans, but I guess that's not the case. You get casual fans in the NFL anyway. Mm-hmm. But what I always found interesting about, this is a 4-game slate, we could screw around a little bit, is when I started first doing DFS, the only thing I really knew about sports betting was the sports betting aspect. I didn't really know how DFS worked. And one thing I noticed about DFS people as opposed to sports betting people is DFS people don't really have the same amount of I don't want to say respect in the wrong way, but the same amount of slant towards home teams. Like DFS people, when they analyze games, they have just no problem going with road teams as opposed to home teams for a lot of different reasons. Even when they look at spreads of games, when I look at some DFS content, they say, boy, I can't believe that the Bucks are only favored by 4 at Portland or something like that. The Bucks are much better. I'm like, well, because they're freaking on the road, So I'm wondering if the same thing is going to take place where the DFS players might give a little more, maybe more respect towards the road teams that maybe they deserve, or maybe the opposite. Maybe since they're more casual fans, that the DFS people are right and the casual fans will overweight the home teams. And I'm just kind of
No, it's a very interesting thing.
Whatever.
But I want to throw something really weird out. Like here, like this is the first year that road teams have been better in the NFL than home teams, and it's never been close. And road teams against the spread just absolutely dominated the whole NFL season. There's a lot of reasons why that may or may not be. The playoffs, I don't know how that's going to affect it, because I'll just tell you my personal take. There's like 3 good teams in football that actually are real teams, and I don't think any of these other teams are very good. I think that these things could go a lot of different ways, and I think we're going to see just very, very adequate teams that people think are much better than they really are, and that's what we're going to see a lot of on the first weekend of the playoffs. Getting right to it, 2 of those teams to me are Buffalo and Houston, both solid teams that are extremely flawed in certain ways. If I'm betting on this game, just betting straight away, I would bet on Buffalo to win this game. I like their team better. I think that while I do love Watson and the receivers, I worry about Houston. I don't think that they're the same. I don't think they're the same defensively without Watt. So I think Buffalo with their defense can really hold Houston in check. And if they can get pressure on Watson, which I think they can, I think it's going to be a tougher day than people realize for Houston. And I just have a little more faith in Buffalo. So I'm going to go that route. And my DFS plays will follow that. Starting off with Singletary. That's the guy who I'm most interested in on the Buffalo side. I think he makes a lot of sense, more than John Brown, but I do like John Brown quite a bit as well. They're both awesome plays, in my opinion. And they're going to be chalky, and there's good reason for it as far as I can see. I am playing the Buffalo wins this game angle. I don't trust that Houston defense, and their run defense, again, not the same without Watt. So I like the Singletary and running it back with one of the receivers from Houston. How about you?
All right. So again, I think I look at it a little bit differently than you, but the way I'm looking at it is first from a DFS perspective. And we talked about this briefly pre-show. We're bringing up Devin Singletary, and, I was looking at ownership versus projections and stuff. And I said, Devin Singletary at 28%, is he any better than Carlos Hyde at 25%? And you said, yeah, kind of, right? For me, I'm not too big of a fan of either of those guys. I also believe that in the playoffs, you are just going to see teams kind of air it out just a little bit more. And so I think that it's, again, this is my take on the game and the game script. I think these guys are going to try to open it up a little more. But the thing is that on the Houston side, I mean, you got their main guy, DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to be 7,700, who is projected to be 35% owned with just about the toughest matchup there is, right? I mean, that guy from Buffalo is insane, so while I'm not, I don't know really where I stand on the defenses matter and the matchups matter, but what I will say is that at 35% ownership, I'm not too interested in taking too big of a stand on someone like Hopkins in this spot. So for me, this whole game seemed like kind of a weird train wreck. The first person I would probably go to if I were going to play anybody was maybe Josh Allen. But then again, I started to get the sense, and we spoke about this again is that I just feel as though this Buffalo and the Tennessee guys are just becoming those kind of sexy plays that everybody just kind of wants to play. So I just have this weird sense that the Buffalo ownership on like Josh Allen and the Tennessee ownership is just going to be more greater than maybe it just otherwise should be. So, I mean, for me, I'm not really interested in much of anything. I put in Beasley just because, again, I was looking for another wide receiver in the spot and just hoping he'd be low owned. And I look at him and he's freaking 30%, at 25%. So him and John Brown, both of them are going to be really high owned. And I don't really like too much from this game. I just kind of threw in the Houston defense just because, again, I've seen them, get aggressive, and maybe, Josh Allen screws up and defenses have just some amount of variance to them. But my first look at this, I really wasn't going with much from this game.
Yeah, interesting. We have definitely like on a slightly different path here because I'm definitely very interested in Singletary, and I think that Will Fuller is one of my favorite tournament plays on the slate. I love Will Fuller. I think this guy is a slate breaker. He is the guy who can win you a slate and is not going to have near the ownership he should. His price doesn't even make him that dangerous. They need him in this game. Like, I would rather take a secondary receiver against Buffalo, especially someone who can line up in and out of the slot, can sort of break you downfield as well. That's sort of how I would try to beat Buffalo, I guess. And I like Will Fuller. I like the either Brown and or Singletary with Fuller on the other side. I'm not
just to tell you, Bobby, I mean, just to give you a heads up, and I've been around, so I'm just kind of reading this right now, and this is as of just a few days ago. We have a quote somebody saying that he's told by multiple sources it's going to be a real long shot for Fuller to play. So just obviously just, keep an eye on that.
I have him at long shot. That's interesting. I've got him as probable, but okay.
It could be. And this note is from January 2nd. So, I mean, it's possible that since then it's been upgraded in some way. But, I mean, if it were me, I mean, if I was going to take a shot, this guy, maybe DeAndre Carter or something like that, maybe he'll be a low-owned. He had 7 targets in the last game? He had 7 targets in the last game. Maybe he'd be a guy I would go to. Again, Fuller. Again, I'd have to really know he's healthy to play him, I think. That's about all I had.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think this game I could make. I do want to throw one thing out. Like, I'm not probably going to end up with much Deshaun Watson because I do think this is a game where, like, I could see a monster performance even in a losing effort potentially. Look, you play the angle that they get down big, you're going to see Watson throw for like 400-plus yards. It's probably why I don't like Carlos Hyde at all. I think Duke Johnson is the savvier play, but I don't think you play either. I don't think I'm going to play either of them. But I do like the Watson to his receivers combo just as – the volume is going to be crazy as good as Buffalo's defense is, and the ownership is going to be lower than it should be. Like, if there was one quarterback to take on this day and you didn't know who anybody was playing, I would pick Deshaun Watson as my quarterback without having to look at if you didn't know who anybody was playing. So even though it's a tough matchup and you're going to get the low ownership because of it, I think he's probably one of the smarter quarterback plays. But again, I'm heavy on the late game, so not going to end up with a ton of them myself.
Okay. Let's move on to Tennessee, New England, and it's a little bit of a battleground, because, as usual, the Patriots make analysis in life really difficult. They do exactly that which makes life the most difficult, in that even in a must-win game or whatever, they put up just a complete dud at home. Which, by the way, in my review, I did announce that Miami was going to give them a hard time, but didn't expect them to win.
Yeah.
And just leading into the playoffs, it's just the perfect time for New England just to confuse everybody as far as what they're about. And it's a real battleground. I don't think that there's any middle ground on this. I don't think you're going to have, and that's probably where the answer is. I don't think you're not going to interview people and ask them what they think of the Patriots and have them say, well, they're kind of okay. They're not maybe as good as they used to be, but they're still a really good team. You're either going to get the fact that Brady's done and New England's trash, or that they've just been sandbagging all year and they do what they do and they're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't think you're going to get a lot of people projecting them for one win. You know what I mean? I think you're going to get people projecting them for a big upset for an upset in the first game, or or just they've been sandbagging the whole day. Look at the spread. The spread is just that perfect middling spread. Like a 5. You know what I mean? That it's just again. I think Tennessee's going to be, I guess, the sexier type of play. And I really have no idea which way to come out on it. So again, I try to let ownership kind of help me with this. But I guess the first thing I'll look at is I do see Ryan Tannehill at 6%. I don't know if that's humanly possible in a 4-game slate for anything to be 6%. So that is, I guess, my first comment on it. Then I'd have to think about what to do with him. Can I play him naked? Can I go with receivers? Do I really want to play Corey Davis for example, assuming that, again, the logic that what they always do. Now, let's talk about this. If this is in fact true, that what Belichick does is shut down their top guy, does that mean that either they stack the box against Derrick Henry, or does that mean they double team A.J. Brown? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you can get away with both. A.J. Brown, 10%, maybe that could be something to do. Derrick Henry, no bargain, 24%, but none of these running backs are going to be just that lower owned. They're all going to take some ownership.
Yeah.
So again, at first glance, the only thing I came up with was uninspiringly owned James White. Mm-hmm. just as, and even he's 20%. Just with the idea that they just Patriots open it up and they don't try to just jam the ball down, and White's that guy. I'm literally at zero luck predicting which the James White game is going to be. So I can certainly, I'm not going to argue with you to say, you know what, New England's defense is just that good. Let's play Michelle at 11%, pair him with the Patriots defense, and let's just, let's dare Tannehill to freaking do something, whatever. I hate to do this, but on a 4-game slate, I don't really see too many options that appealing in this game either.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great, but I think I can make a case for stacking New England.
Okay.
I think that, I understand the Tennessee defense. They're going to stand out on DraftKings, and it makes sense. Look, the Patriots have not looked good. We've seen this story too many times for us not to bet on it at no ownership. And I think Julian Edelman is just easily – I don't know if he's my favorite receiver, but after my first glance, he's definitely my favorite receiver on the slate. I think he's it's playoff time. It's time for Julian Edelman. It's time for James White. If you want to throw Brady in there at a really cheap price tag, I sort of like that game script building. And you can play Corey Davis as another cheap option on the other side, then sort of like stack another game with this game. I think it's a really interesting way to go. You also have a really cheap Mohamed Sanu. I understand it's not the most exciting play, but he's 3.9. Certainly will be on the field enough to where they should be able to justify that. They have enough plays with him. If I could see them throwing the ball, I don't believe in this team in New England on the offensive end, but I am completely happy to be wrong again. Because we've seen this story last year. A New England team that I thought was actually better offensively than this one was just a far inferior team in the Super Bowl, and they still won the Super Bowl. So, they weren't inferior in that game. We just know what New England can do when they need to, and I just think it's worth taking the bet on the stack. Like, the ownership's nowhere near where it would have been. You can look at that other thing. If this game was played a month ago in the same spot, New England's probably an 11, 12-point favorite. It's interesting, man. I really just am not buying that they're completely done and dead. And I could see them wanting to just hammer the team, like just keep throwing it on them, going after them. So I like that.
I think Edelman's hurt. I think that game was a real. I think that was a terrible disaster for New England, because I think that there's nobody in this entire slate that would have appreciated the bye more than Edelman. With that said,
he's going to get 15 targets.
Right. With that, like you said, they're going to, inject his shoulder with whatever they need to inject him with, and he's going to be out there running his routes, and and especially if Brady starts to feel nervous or whatever, he's going to just get locked in on him. And I just from a pure math perspective, you give a guy just that many targets, it's going to be kind of tough to not have some of him. I think that maybe Belichick just kind of coaches his way into kind of an ugly win. Maybe I don't really want to. Sanu is, I guess, fine. I suppose. It's just brutal, man. I'm just looking at these freaking Saints in the dome, and it's got to find these points somewhere, and I don't know where I'm going to get them from this game. Maybe you know what? Maybe you just have Derrick Henry run it down their throats and go for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's.
It's completely within the realm of possibility that he runs for 250 yards. It would not absolutely shock me, but I would first of all, I think that I like this Tennessee team. I don't think that they're there yet, but I actually like this team quite a bit, and I don't see them winning this game. I think that New England shows up, and I think you see a big performance from one of the usual suspects, and I wouldn't be surprised if they really, there's a way that the New England defense with the Sony Michel play could actually work out to be really, a monster play in this kind of. They might. We've seen this story before, and they win by 45 points. We've seen it too many times. Let's just bet on them until they face a team that's better than them, and this team is not. That's my personal.
So I have an ownership question for you. I guess, you know what? It answer my question. What I was about to say is, how is Derrick Henry at 8,200 going to be just as highly owned as Alvin Kamara at 7,400? I looked at the ownership projections and I said, oh, he's not. Okay, so that solved that problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a pretty ballsy pivot, actually, if you went to Henry and somehow faded Kamara. That could be something, and that is one thing you could do. I can't believe now this 4-game slate. I'm just not liking a little bit more. But
you're shocked by my take on the next thing.
What's that?
You're going to be shocked by my take on the next game.
All right, let's go. Minnesota, New Orleans. I guess I'll just give my take because it's going to be not as shocking. So my shocking take is I'm looking at, oh my God, are these ownership projections right? So these ownership projections are right. I've got another play, but let's presume that ownership is kind of normal. Alvin Kamara is projects extremely well as a running back. He projects to be, from a point per dollar perspective and raw points perspective, it looks to be, I would probably say, the best play by a lot. So he's going to garner 35% plus ownership.
It's going to be higher. I think in big tournaments he'll be 50%.
Yeah, and then again, the way I compare him to, if I compare him to Dalvin Cook, they're looking at him as being 30%, and that's no bargain either, and he doesn't really project nearly as well. But boy, oh boy, I don't know. And I originally was going to say that. I was going to say, listen, it's going to be tough to not take either Kamara or Thomas, depending on how, considering how they project. Especially if you're going to need points on the slate. So originally I went for this Kamara thing. I got this ridiculous play that you're going to have to talk me out.
Let's go. Okay.
But if he's actually freaking 2%, I'll try Latavius Murray.
Oh, I'm all over it.
All right, good.
As I'm building the script in this, I've got him programmed in at 20.
Okay, all right.
So I'm completely all over that play. So the Saints, there's a path where the Saints, first of all, this is the biggest spread on the slate. There's definitely a path where the Saints could run away with this game. If that happens and they're, at the goal line, you could see a 2 or 3 touchdown game from Lat Murray. There is a very reasonable chance that he could end up outscoring Kamara if this game goes a certain way. I also think Kamara at the owner, obviously he's the best. Everything you look up will have him as graded out as basically the best running back option on the slate. So I'm not going to play him. I'm not going to play much of him. I'll have below the field. I think he's going to be chalk. I think I probably have half the field, maybe a little less. I have much more interest in Dalvin Cook, who I think the projection systems have higher owned than he's actually going to be. I don't buy – this Saints team, I think, has literally as good, if not the best talent in the NFL at position by position. I don't think they play like it most of the time, and they've beaten up on some weak teams. I see a path where the Minnesota pass rush can give Breeze some problems. I like the upset in this one, too. I don't necessarily like Minnesota to win, but I think they cover this game. I think this game does end up staying close. Now, again, I want, for DFS purposes, to try and play the angle of the runaway. You play the Saints defense along with Lat Murray or something like that. A good way to go, for sure. I do like the Saints defense. I don't believe in Kirk Cousins as a real quarterback. But I think that there's a lot of talent on the other side of this team, on the Minnesota side of this. I think that Stephon Diggs is one of the best plays on the slate also. I think that his ownership for his price, if this was a regular season game and it was he would have the same ownership at 6.6. I also think Adam Thielen is completely in play. Play the fact that you can even do that with play the Saints defense, Lat Murray, and throw in Thielen or Diggs. And it makes that's a game script that I can get behind. To play Michael Thomas at this price, at this ownership, I just am going to try and find another way to go. I don't want to be all over the main game on this slate. So I'm going to play the guys from this game who are going to be lower owned, like the Diggs and the Thielen, who I'll be well ahead of the field on. And I'll play Lat Murray. I'll be below the field on Kamara, even though it makes me nervous. And I'll be ahead of the field on basically all of Minnesota. Just thinking they're going to need to rely on those 3 guys between Diggs, Thielen, and Cook. I expect one of those guys to at least have double-digit catches if New Orleans does control the game. So I think we have to play people from this game. I'm not as excited about it, but I'm leaning more on the Minnesota side, them playing from behind. And then that's why I'm also leaning towards Lat Murray as a really wild tournament pivot that could end up winning someone
I wouldn't worry too much about fading Kamara. Like it's people. I mean, again, I don't want to just game log or whatever check, but he's played 17 games this year. Only 2 of them would get there in this game.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like kind of ridiculous when you think about it. And people kept playing him in great spots, and he kept busting and kept doing whatever. Then he finally freaking got there, and then they went back to him again, and 2x or something like that. So not that he can't have a good game or whatever, but I'm not too worried about it. You know what I mean? And the other thing I would say is that
Murray has almost as many carries, by the way.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is even in game scripts, whatever. I mean, Murray. Even when what's his name is healthy and whatever it is, he gets in the game. He's not like it's like a one back set. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so I have no problem in that, and I wouldn't worry too much about Kamara breaking the slate. I mean, he can obviously he's got that talent, but if you just give me a snapshot of this season, I wouldn't be too worried about a guy with that profile at 35% ownership. Just burying me too much. I really wouldn't be.
Yeah. I think I actually feel better even as the more I think about it. As you pointed out, like it just feels like you can go different routes. I do think that I do think Cook is the guy who's going to get like all of the work. Assuming that he's okay. I just think he's the better play between the two of them. I'm telling you, we have the ownership is similar. They aren't going to be. Cook is going to be on the field more and get more usage. I think in pretty much every type of game environment, from behind, from ahead, I just think you're going to see a lot of Dalvin Cook.
So you don't think that these other guys from Minnesota, these guys were just fillers over the last couple of weeks while he was out? You don't think?
Yeah, I know Madison actually is really talented, but I just cannot believe in a playoff game on the road in New Orleans that they don't leave Dalvin Cook in the game until he breaks something. Like, I don't see why he ever comes off the field in this game, in my personal opinion. I know he will, but it's a tribute to the fact that Madison is a talented change of pace back. I don't see really like any reason that Dalvin Cook shouldn't. I mean, he should play 80% of this. I think it's going to be a lot more than people think.
Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith, both of them project about 5% ownership.
Yeah, I always used to like Kyle Rudolph. I just don't play him anymore, really. I think you can certainly throw him into a script if you're playing a bunch of lineups. You don't want to leave him out at 3.5 at no ownership, but not what I'm excited about. I actually like the Jared Cook a little bit in this game, but I don't really want to touch these Minnesota tight end. I don't like playing Saints. They're always too chalky. Offense is hit or miss, by the way, and I know they exploded the other day, but they're hit or miss. I know Breeze has been on fire lately, and they've played some really bad teams. I just think that like this is a spot where it could just hurt me, but if I'm right, I'm lapping the field because I'm going to have less ownership of. I will have like no more. The only Saints player that I'll have above average will be Lat Murray and maybe Jared Cook. That's it.
Well,
I'm not playing Michael Thomas. I'm sorry. I'm just.
Well, as we get to this, it's going to be kind of funny, but maybe the reason why I bring up Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph and what's his name and Jared Cook to some extent too. Knowing those other guys are really cheap. Like if Kyle Rudolph gets a touchdown, or if Irv Smith has a game, or Jared Cook has one of his 20-point games, you're gonna have a lot of fun fading like a 60% owned Goddard, aren't you? I mean, like. But then again, people are going to probably double tight end with him anyway. But I don't know. Again, as we transition to the next game, that's the only reason I brought those two guys up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so Seattle, Philly. Again, I guess you're on a similar side to I am. This just because of the way it kind of worked. I mean, I was looking for kind of a combination of kind of projected guys I can get behind, game scripts I can kind of get behind, and lower, I guess, owned ideas. So this is just kind of where I landed. So I went with I thought that the Seattle idea was a place I would start. Tyler Lockett, although he could be somewhat tilting, he could sometimes just completely disappear. 15% ownership. I think that in a game like this, he's, look, I think Wilson's just going to try to do it in a way, try to do it himself. I think that the Marshawn Lynch thing was kind of a good move by them, but I'm not going to go that route, and I think that it is going to be a Russell Wilson game, and wherever he decides to go is where he's going to decide to go, and Lockett at 15% is fine. I didn't go with Metcalf, but I could certainly make a case for him. I play sometimes David Moore, but I think when I think about it, it's probably just showdowns I end up playing him. So maybe I wouldn't go to him. But the guy who seems to be getting a lot of in the tight end position is Hollister. Mm-hmm. I mean, he seems to be getting a lot of targets, and he seems to be a good play. And again, at 1/3 the ownership of Goddard, he's certainly someone that can be included in these stacks. So I mean, the first thing I did was put Lockett and Hollister together. And I'm going to go over the Philly guys in a minute, but I would, just before I forget, remember to give me your take on the Seattle running back, because I thought that guy the other night was very, very active, Travis Homer. And, not that he's going to be under-owned, but I mean, maybe he's under-owned. I mean, he's showing to be 15%. I think Lynch is more of a, I would say decoy, but Lynch is less of an, I think that Homer's actually, he was good. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at the ownership being as low as it is on him.
Okay.
I sort of had him in my one of the guys I didn't really want to be crazy on in this game, but I do feel fine with him. I wanted to side more with the Seattle passing game, along with the way you're going to beat Philadelphia anyway is through the air, and that's not very hard to do. I think the spread on this game, I think this is an easy bet the over situation for me. I think Seattle wins this game. I guess I just realized I only like one home team this week.
As I said, right?
Yeah, I really like. I think Seattle is gonna beat up on these guys, and I think Carson Wentz sucks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. I think he is an absolute travesty. It's bizarre how bad he is, and that people still think he's good. And I know he's got the ability to be good. I loved him. I thought he was going to be the next superstar of the NFL. The guy's never won a playoff game. He has one of the, I think he's the losingest record against winning teams, any player on a winning team. Over the last, and pretty much every year, that's what he does. So I'm not going to bet on him, but I do think this is a situation. I'm not going to bet on him to win the game, but it's a situation where I expect Philadelphia to be I think Seattle could get all over them. And I think that you're going to see a lot of Philadelphia having to throw the ball because Seattle's not going to let them run it. So I think, you got to take shots with both of these passing games. I think you want to be for me, I'm going to be double the ownership of basically everyone in this game, except for maybe Perkins. I'll probably be right with the field on Josh Perkins. And with Goddard, I'll probably be well ahead of the field. I have no problem just going completely almost locking in Goddard.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, do we expect Ertz to play?
It depends on obviously if Ertz plays.
Well, does it? I mean, that's what I'm asking you. So these
the ownership drops. Of course, no, I'm still playing Goddard no matter what. But
okay.
The ownership will drop if Ertz plays, and I still play Goddard. I have no problem with it. I'll play Ertz too.
Let's talk about that. So we have two tight ends in this game from Philadelphia. One's 6,000 and one's 5,000. They're priced now. Again, we could debate this, but they're priced like good mid-range wide receivers. And I know the argument that that they're not really just tight ends because they run these deeper routes or whatever it is, and they are probably the best receivers on the team. But I just again wonder. I just again wonder how much of a chalky Goddard I want to get to. If in fact he's super chalky. For me, again, if you're really pure and you really want to turn this into a passing game, as gross as it is, not as gross as it is. I mean, it's going to be 15-20%, but Greg Ward as a wide receiver, I just have more. I don't want to say confidence. I shouldn't say it. I don't have more confidence in him than Goddard. But if Goddard and Ertz are both playing, I don't know if they're both going to be really chalky, if that's the way it ended up going. I don't know.
I get it, especially because Wentz does spread the ball around, but you got to look at. The targets have been there for Goddard, double digits the last couple of games. I think it's a smash.
What is this Joshua Perkins thing? I missed that. So
Josh Perkins is the other tight end from Philly, assuming that we don't have Ertz. People are going to play him. Don't get me they're going to play him. They'll run two tight end sets and they'll use Perkins in the passing game as well. So at 2.9, he's definitely in play.
So what about the rest of this game? What about the
Tyler Lockett is my favorite play in this game, which is really rare because I almost like Metcalf. Tyler Lockett.
Okay.
I think he's going to absolutely destroy the secondary. I don't think they can keep up with him. And I think Metcalf also is a monster play. Like, I think these guys are gonna, and the price on Metcalf is gonna keep people away from him. I think the price will even keep people off of Lockett somewhat because they're all gonna play Michael Thomas. I think Tyler Lockett is just absolutely, along with Edelman. I know Edelman, look, he's banged up, whatever. They're my two favorite receivers on the slate. And then I just like Goddard better. I don't care about the high ownership. I'm just going to play this game. So I have no problem eating that as my one chalk play. Like, you know what I mean? That's okay with me. I'm just going to play him. I will have some lineups without him, but mostly he's going to be my tight end. And I play everybody in this game. I'll be ahead of the field on Miles Sanders, mostly hoping he catches the ball out of the backfield. Again, I'll be ahead of the field on Wentz. I'll be on both passing games, Wentz and Wilson. Russell Wilson is my number one quarterback this week, and that's it. I mean,
all right. Let me. Okay, so we've been through the 4 games, and I want to suggest something else to you. So it's the playoff game, and in the playoff game, there's no screwing around. They're going to go with their best shot to win, and we look out in the future. We visualize, at the end of the day, when someone win $1 million, you say, "Oh my God, I can't believe X was 5% owned or 10% owned." You realize that Boston Scott's like the best running back like in history. You know what I mean? Like, the guy's freaking insane. And yeah, they moved him up to 5,800, but Christ's sake, you know what I mean? Like, if they have any brain, they're gonna find a way to get him the ball until somebody figures out how to freaking stop him. And if he is actually 8% owned, I mean, hell, on a 4-game slate, if I'm not going to try it, if I think there's going to be points and there's going to be passing and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of silly not to play some of them if you want to know the truth.
I mean, you got to remember Sanders got taken out of the game,
okay,
which gave him all the work and 3 goal line carries. At the same time, he did have 84 receiving yards.
Right? I mean,
yeah, I get the argument for it. I think that I'll be ahead of the field for sure because there's not going to be that many people on him. But I would prefer just playing Sanders.
I got you.
I think that they're just not really close in terms of anything. It just was a fluky situation that happened a couple times.
Jordan Howard active completely?
Doesn't mean anything. He barely got in the last game, and they were so bad in that game. They were so lucky to come away with the win. They were so bad.
Let me tell you something. All of these teams, and I talked about this when I did my slate review before, and it's funny, everybody thinks that just because a team has to win that they're going to play well. It just, life doesn't work that way, man.
No.
And all these, with the exception of the Cowboys, every team that had to win was really, really struggled. It's just not that easy. The other team gets paid too, and that's just the way it goes, Yep. So it's I would agree with that. I thought Philly looked kind of crappy also. But on the one hand, this is the playoffs. You know what I think? Maybe everybody's right. Maybe the idea is that New England does suck. I don't know. Again, I'm really just not good at making those kind of determinations.
I mean, we've never been right about it before, so it's hard for me to go until we have some proof of more than losing a game at the end of the year to Miami, which they basically just make a habit of doing every year. So it doesn't really change my opinion. In fact, I think we're getting a steal. What if New England wins that game by 20 points or 30 points? Like, everybody in New England's, what are they? They're not going to be this price. They wouldn't be have only 24 implied points, like projected points. And I understand. I don't buy their team that much either. But they're going to win this football game. They're not losing. This is not the way that it ends. It doesn't end at the home loss to Tennessee. Sorry.
It might. It just might.
It doesn't.
It just might.
I'm telling you right now, if you want the lock of the week, you just take New England. They're winning that game. They're not losing this one. They'll lose another one when they face the better teams. This is not a better team than they are.
Sounds good.
All right.
So I think the most important lesson, and again, I'd still right back to the beginning, is be very. I don't think that your lineups at the end of the last game should be the same as when it was locked. I really think that everybody should be moving stuff around based on how they're doing earlier and things like that. What would be interesting?
I would encourage you to try and leave money on the table this week more than most, especially if that's a pivot you have to make. If you're going into the last game and you decide, okay, instead of Goddard, I'm going to play Hollister for 900 less. don't think you need to have a 2v2 ready. You can just make that 1v1 and leave 900 on the table or whatever it is. That's a really good way to differentiate yourself in these playoff situation lineups, because people don't do that.
You know, here's another thing that you might be able to do. And again, I would hope that the better players, the higher volume players, do this. And I promise you that if I played for 500,000 tonight, like some people, I guess, do, I mean, I certainly would do this, and I would figure out a way to do this, among other things. So this could be another video, but several things I would do if I played 500,000. Number one is I would certainly have people hired at all these NBA games to like scout and make sure that these guys aren't injured going in. I would spend the money to do it. Second thing is, when you have like a slate like this, and you have island games, whatever, if let's say you're projecting, Devin Singletary to be 30% owned, and after the first game happens, all right, they show what the ownership is, right? So they show that he is, let's say, 15% owned. Okay, what you should be able to do is derive from that information the fact that other guys that were projected to be lower owned are going to be chalkier, okay? Right. And there should be some algorithm that, like, when you actually make all these ownership projections, should all add up to, I guess, 100%. I know that there's no way they do that. I know there's no way they go through the whole slate and have everything add up to 100%. It's just not possible, okay? But that they should do, and you should be able to, at least in your head, adjust that if somebody that you thought was going to be chalky turns out to be lower owned, that means that someone who you thought were going to be lower owned, I guess, would be chalkier later. And likewise, if you thought that, somebody on Buffalo, let's say you thought, anybody, let's say you thought that the Buffalo's quarterback, Allen, should have been 10%, he goes up 30%. That means that you shouldn't be as worried about playing a chalky quarterback later, because he's not actually be as chalky as you think, because you at least for sure that what some of that ownership already went to a place that you didn't think it was going to go.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's a really well put. This is an interesting slate. Guys, feel free to hit us up on Twitter, on Instagram, anything. We are going to get back to it. We're going to load this up for you because we've got NFL, NBA stuff to get to tonight. I hope you all crush this weekend. We're about to have an amazing year. We've got the site coming out soon. We'll get you guys all the information. Please, in the meantime, like and subscribe, and we will talk to you guys a little bit later.
Hey, I have one other thing. When it comes to like hitting up on Instagram and Twitter stuff, I do apologize. I'm going to figure out kind of the best way to make myself more available. I just have to figure out logistically the best way to do it. So, like, for example, I have an Instagram account, but it's really just my basketball coaching account, right? So I have to like kind of figure out what I want to do. And as far as Twitter goes, I just don't know how you do it. I can't like just keep on checking the Twitter. That's why I think the live stuff is going to be like a big deal to be able to answer questions kind of on the fly. But I'm going to try to figure it out, because it's just kind of like what's important is to be kind of available to like at least answer some questions and stuff. So I'm working on it. I'm just working.
We're getting there, guys. And yeah, again, we're going to actually, we'll have live shows starting next week. So on both YouTube and Twitch. So make sure you are following both. In the meantime, thanks very much. Good luck to everyone this weekend, and we will talk to you shortly. LFG.